Okay.
Good. So, Joe, we're going to be actually starting your reflections on your pact before you've started writing the first 4 task sections. But what I'm going to be asking you to be doing is looking back at the week-long unit where you had your students write comparison, contrast essays on the subject of home, based on their selection of, I think, 2 of the 6 or so pieces,
That's right.
or 8 or so pieces they had
Yeah,
read.
8.
And you've actually just finished reading the initial drafts of these papers, as I saw today in class, and handed them back to your students, and they're engaged in the process of revising those essays based on your quite extensive comments on those essays. So what we'll be asking in this interview is if you could explain what you felt went well and was successful in the pact, starting from the day that I did observe, where you were introducing the assignment to your students on a Friday, and then leading through to the completion of their initial drafts of these home essays.
Absolutely, and I have to say from the outset, I thought that the workshop method of writing the essays, where students had a chance to day by day tackle different stages of the essay writing, that was terrific. I thought on the whole it really was a great model to work with. It's really productive. Students are interacting with each other. They are addressing their essays in a kind of processual manner, so they're seeing writing as a process.
Right.
And I'm having lots of opportunities to give them direct instruction, but then give them time to work on their own, or in groups, or with others. And
so the 4 days following the day that I observed you, students were workshopping.
It was a workshop method, and I think that really, I mean, just in general, I think is a great way to do an essay.
Right.
But for PACT especially, it was really lent itself well to the kinds of tasks that we have, because there were lots of opportunities for me to give direct instruction to the whole class, but also, more important, a lot of opportunities for the students to work together, to exchange ideas, and for me to give guidance or check in smaller groups. So I thought that it was a pleasure to go through the process. I thought students were on board and enjoyed it, and plus I swear by that method, the workshop method for writing essays.
Right.
So I couldn't be happier with that aspect.
Right. And we should say, having taught for a number of years at the university level, largely using the workshop method.
It's already a method I was very familiar with. I had to adapt somewhat to my master teacher's process and the limited time frame that we had. So those were some differences, but on the whole, this was already a process.
And I suppose we should say these are 8th graders, because we
haven't. We're dealing with 8th graders.
Right. Haven't made that clear.
So that's another big difference.
Yeah. Were you able to have Emily, your mentor teacher, take some video of you as you were working in the smaller groups? Yeah,
we did a number of video takes, and I'm glad we did a number, because a couple of them didn't come out so well because of the audio and the camera not being close enough.
Right.
On other occasions, I just think that the period that we were filming wasn't great. So, but we came out with a really great clip, which I think will work well with PACT.
Good. And will you use the introduction, the Friday introduction, as your video clip?
Yeah, I will, absolutely, because I thought that as well showed a critical part of the step, the whole process, and so I was happy to have that for the.
So now, stepping back, having spent many hours clearly reading the quite good initial drafts of your student essays. I would say the majority of the grades that I saw were certainly in the sort of B+, A- range, which is quite extraordinary. And the writing was actually better than I thought. I thought it was quite a challenging topic for the students.
This was tough. They weren't familiar with writing a comparison contrast essay, so there were a lot of challenges, a lot of things they needed to know before they could tackle the essay, as you mentioned, I did provide extensive feedback, and
Indeed you did.
that's something I want to revisit going forward, because it was too much. The kind of copious feedback I was giving them, I'm sure is useful. Some of it probably isn't something they're going to totally take advantage of anyway. So, but it's not sustainable for me as a teacher, and I need to calibrate going forward.
My come to Jesus moment on that particular subject was when I wrote extensive comments on my 10th graders, and it was end of the year, just like it is now, and I invited them for a get together at our house, because our little condo, because they had all done projects that they were presenting. So they did the projects, and they were sort of slide tape presentations, and so they were quite good. And then after I gave them their final essays with extensive comments, about half of them, as they walked out, deposited the trash barrel that was conveniently located by our front door.
Well, at least they put them in the trash. The worst thing is when you find them on the floor, after class. Yeah. Right.
But as Brent Dukor says, feedback has to be timely, and it has to be concise.
The 7 keys for actionable, for feedback.
Yeah, those are all well worth taking under consideration. So in the last question is, if you had to go back from the beginning and do anything differently, what would it be?
Well, there would be quite a few things. One, I wish that I had more time, because it's just a short turnaround for them. So I do feel that some of the barriers, or some of the issues that came up had to do with the larger confines or constraints of the unit, because we were working with a textbook. They were piloting a textbook, and so the unit was very structured.
Just a minute.
And I wish that that I had more time to front load some of the things that we were tackling in the essay. So, for example, and I tried to do this, but I gave them a T-chart, and I did a lot of exercises leading up to the essay that worked on comparison and contrast skills.
I remember seeing that.
And I thought, I do think they were effective, but one thing I noticed in a lot of the essays is that some of those exercises weren't translating into the essay, so they weren't necessarily doing that kind of stuff in the essay, even though they had done it on these shorter exercises.
Very interesting. I had the same comment from Jeanette, who was using a similar exercise, but in preparation for readers' theater performances, and she said the character analysis that she was having her students do at the same point actually didn't translate into
And so that's certainly something for me to think about going forward, is how and whether that's a matter of just having more time over time. And, but I certainly would look back to that transition and think, how can I get them to better apply these kind of skills that we've been practicing in the essay?
Yes, exactly. How to make a strong and compelling connection between what they're doing as preparatory exercises and just consistently showing them how those are going to relate to the
because
it's tough.
It is tough, because what was really effective about that workshop method is you're taking them through different steps in the process of writing essay, and they were, my master's teacher already had worked with them on that process, so they're accustomed to it, they know it, and it works for them, and they make good progress. So they're familiar with that, but maybe they're less familiar with applying stuff that we've been talking about earlier in the unit, and recuperating that in the essay.
It's conceptually difficult too. So we're going to stop this interview, because I like to keep them between 8-10 minutes.
Absolutely.
But thanks, Joe, for being so helpfully reflective on your own.
Thank you so much.
Fact week.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.